I want to welcome everybody to Friday's edition of Recovery Live today. Hope you guys all had a great week. My name is Tom. I'm a recovered alcoholic from Came to Believe Recovery, where we make sick people healed and healed people powerful. Did I get that right, Sean?
Good job.
Nailed it.
Exactly
Nailed it.
right, Father. So today we're going to be talking about workplace addiction, and my guest today is Peter Roselli. He's actually a neighbor of mine. I could almost throw a rock and hit where Peter is. We met a couple of weeks ago, and Peter comes to us from the financial district in Wall Street and has had a career in finance in New York City, has some great insights into addiction in the workplace and in the high finance of New York City. And Sean Higgins is with us as well this week again. Sean, as a business owner too, has a lot of insight into workplace addiction and the issues that come with it, along with a mastery of the Came to Believe Recovery program. I want to take a couple announcements, guys, today. Sean is actually running our first on-ground retreat in a year.
Awesome.
Where people will leave saying they are recovered, as we see. We are so excited to be back on ground, having our message delivered in person, face to face, the way it was meant to be. We're looking forward to bringing more retreats as the summer goes on into the fall. We're coming back, guys. In the meantime, we still got our virtual events going. Next weekend, March 19th through 21st, is our next virtual retreat, VR10. Can you believe we've done 10 virtual retreats since the pandemic started with complete success? It was just nothing we thought would happen. And then there's one in April too, the 9th, 10th, and 11th. So there's two, and the registrations are open if anybody is interested and wants to sign up to get free. At our retreats, guys, Came to Believe Recovery. Some of you that haven't been on our program before, what we do at the retreats is we take you through the program of Alcoholics Anonymous, just the way the founders did it back in the 1930s. We have a connection at Came to Believe right back to Clarence Snyder, who was sponsored by Dr. Bob, who was one of the founders, him and Bill Wilson. Clarence Snyder took some of our founders through their steps, and he started these retreats that we run 50 plus years ago. So we didn't just come out of this yesterday. We've been around the country and now around the world with this life-saving message for over 50 years. Just recently is when we've decided we've got to take this thing even more global. And Sean has joined us, and Peter here is today to help us talk about the problem and help with the solution and start spreading awareness even greater than before, because there is a solution, right, Sean?
Oh yeah. And I just want to address something quick, because there's nothing I love better than correcting you live on Facebook. And while we let the other people join, no, it's not so much a correction, but Tom is right that, we're going back to the founders, but we really find our roots in the Midwest founders, the Akron, Ohio group, the Cleveland, Ohio group, not so much in the New York founders group of it all, but we're carrying on that legacy of Dr. Bob, Clarence Snyder, and the good old timers. But here's the deal. I got one complaint, Tom. We need some intro music. I got to get jacked up on this thing. I'm coming in hard, and if we don't have like that pumped up, where is it? Where's the intro music?
I got Tim Anderson working on it. He came back from maternity leave. The poor guy gets a little break because he had a baby. He's our marketing manager and our wizard behind our effects. We're going to have it by next week, I think, Sean.
Awesome.
We're going to have some intro and some outro stuff. So we know we want to bring that up. God wants us to be doing everything with excellence. So we're going to do it, buddy.
Well, if he needs some like B-roll footage of me dancing, just let him know I'm available. I can shoot it myself and send it to him.
He already said he does not want B-roll of you dancing.
Okay, well, his loss. Maybe the world's not ready for it yet.
It's not ready for it. But so what do we do at these retreats, guys, right? We do what the founders did is we take people through the steps quickly. We take them through in a weekend. In a weekend, you don't think we can do it? We can. And it's what they did. As a matter of fact, there is tons of evidence that Dr. Bob took people through their steps in an afternoon and set them free. When you're ready, the answer is there. We tell you that you're going to do steps 1 through 9 one time in your life. And then you're going to do 10, 11, and 12 every day. Practical tools with a set of principles that are that underlie this whole thing that everyone would agree are tools that would be beneficial to anyone in life. Things like being honest, being unselfish, having a pure motive, and doing everything in love. Who could say those are bad principles? And they all happen to be Christian principles that underlie this whole program. It all comes out of the Bible, our program. I know, Sean, it's shocking that people know. But Alcoholics Anonymous had its birth through that. The founders were in a Christian Bible study before they wrote the book. So the principles underneath it are all those principles based on that. And so the power comes from an all powerful, creative intelligence in the universe, which is what our big book says, but it's God, we know, and it's the God of the Bible. And when you get a personal relationship with him and you work through this program and you use these practical tools, you are set free and you will call yourself recovered. That book even says, I was reading this morning, it says, we feel a man is unthinking when he says that sobriety is enough. And we say the same thing. We offer you a fourth dimension of existence, guys, that is beyond anything that you could imagine. You're going to hear Sean and Peter and I today talk about the life we lead today. Oh, by the way, we don't drink and we don't drug. But what we have is a life that we could never have predicted before. And that's available for you. If you want to challenge us on it and we're wrong, all you did was waste a weekend. But what if we're right? And this thing can set you free.
Yeah.
It is a life like you can't imagine, right, Peter? I mean, can you imagine today, back when you were in your addiction, that you could have this kind of freedom?
No, in fact, I was saying back in those days, there was a song by Neil Young, and the tagline was, "It's better to burn out than it is to rust." So we used to joke, I hope I die young because I don't want to rust. It's just this big, wrong way of thinking. So I don't think I could have ever imagined that I'd even still be alive when I was in the depths of my drug usage and alcohol. So yeah, you're right. And it really feels like every day you start by just saying thank you to be alive and healthy and not have the police knocking on the door.
Right. Well, let's get to our giveaway and then we'll get into our conversation today. I think it's going to be really, really interesting and very enlightening, and it affects all of us. So today, Sarah is our wizard behind the screen, and she will pick a random viewer who will get the I Am Recovered shirt. So once she picks that random viewer, she'll let me know on a text and I will announce it. And then you can send your address and we'll send that to you. As usual, at the end of the show, we'll do the End Addiction shirt. Next week, I think we're going to have some other things that we're going to give away. We got some other neat stuff for you. So as soon as Sarah lets me know, I will announce it. So like I said, my guest today is Peter Roselli. Peter is, I can let him introduce himself in a minute and give us a little bit about his background and what brings him on our program today. And we're going to be talking about workplace addiction and all those things that come with it. All right, here's Sarah. Jessica Sanchez wins the shirt. Yay, Jessica. Send your address to Sarah and we'll get that shirt right out to you. Perfect. So Peter, why don't you give us a little background on where you came from and how you're sitting here today so ready to help us share this great message?
Yeah, like I said, very grateful for the opportunity and the connection here, and hope to be increasing our connection and helping more people. So I'm in northern New Jersey, close to New York City. That's where a lot of the Italian immigrants came in the early 1900s. That's where both my grandparents came through Ellis Island, and were just hardworking people that barely spoke the language when they got here. So I saw a lot of real good work ethic. But I was a pretty good athlete. I ended up getting a scholarship to play football in college, but I was also partying. And because we were so close to New York City, we could go into the city easily and get drugs and bring them back and sell them in the high school. And, it was way too much, too fast, not mature at all about how we were handling our lives. And, it was kind of a double thing for me because being an athlete, they don't normally party that much. So it was all an attempt to just be accepted and, frankly, a lot of really bad intentions of what to do, with women. But that was the game I was being taught. that's how you had, more status in the group I was growing up with. So it wasn't a question of whether or not we were going to do drugs and the people I was hanging around with. It was just, whether you were going to get caught and, how well you played that game, which was all deceptive and all lies. And everybody thinks they can handle it until they can't. And you're usually, under a truck somewhere, hoping somebody gets the jack and get you out from under that bus that you got hit by. And those are some tough lessons to learn. And I didn't really learn them until I was much older, 25, compared to high school. I didn't stop until I was 25, which was 1983. January 1st is when I made a decision I wasn't going to go back to it. And haven't, so that could only be a supernatural gift because I didn't have the willpower to do it, that's for sure. And I knew, that first step of you have to acknowledge that you're not in control of your life and you need help, so took a good honest look in the mirror and recognized, if I keep going on the trajectory I'm on, I'm probably not going to be alive because I was doing such risky things. And, you think you're better at the game and you think you're fooling people, but I wasn't. And it was getting very dangerous where I was. I know people have died for what I did and I didn't. So I'm just grateful that, I got a second chance, really more like a 200th chance.
Yeah.
So they never, knowing that, I always wanted to try to help other people know that there's a way out, that it's not as hopeless as it feels when you're stuck in it. And that's been, a very rewarding part of my life, that 12th step of going out and helping other people without jamming them, without, forcing it on them or making it look like you're better than they are. Nobody likes that. Nobody wants to feel like you're lecturing them. It's more about, one person to another who can relate to the things that other people are dealing with and give them hope, just a ray of hope that this is not the only option on the menu.
Right. So let's fast forward to today and let's fast forward through your experience in your career,
Sure.
on Wall Street and some big firms that you've worked for and some,
Right.
You've had quite a career in the New York City area. And as you said, you've kind of had it be kind of an avocation or a mission of yours to help and work with anyone that has addiction problems because you got out of it, right? So it's something that you're very interested in. Before we talk about, some of the barriers, how bad do you see the problem in New York City and others in like the financial, the Wall Street world, all of this?
Right.
How bad is the problem?
Yeah. So, there's a lot of functioning people that you wouldn't know are dealing with an addiction because they've learned how to cope. But it's bad. There's a lot of pressure to produce. And Wall Street's not that much different than other industries. It's just that it's known that if you're very good in that field, especially in sales, that there's basically an unlimited amount of money you can make because they're very complex deals that they're working on. So if one big business wants to sell off a division to another, it's no different than the real estate market, right? If you're in real estate, you make a commission on the sale. So if you sell a bigger house, you make a bigger commission. Same thing on Wall Street. You sell somebody's business, you get a big fee for that. And then you become known as the guy, the rainmaker. And then you get put on the next job and the next one. So there's all this attitude and survival mechanisms. There's competition. There's people trying to take your job. And there's pressure. You're on a tightrope all the time trying to meet your family obligations and then still meet the work obligations. In one of the big banks, they actually had to change the swipe cards so they wouldn't work after midnight because people were working so long that they were afraid, that they were, actually there was a couple of suicides because the pressure was so high for them to get there. And, you can understand why somebody would want to take an accelerant. So that might be the gateway drug in the door is, not caffeine. I promise you there's other things that can keep you awake longer. And then, it sounds good until you crash. And then you're just a miserable person when the drug wears off, right? So there's a lot of mask wearing. There's a lack of transparency and authenticity, and you're playing a role in order to meet an end. And we're not meant for that. We're meant for honesty. We're meant to be able to live in community with each other and just be honest, like a good football team would, right? Everybody knows there's different skill levels, but we're all on a team. corporate America has lost that in many ways because it's just each person for themselves. And, there's a lot of really, high achieving women on Wall Street in every field, right? It's not just men. And they're just as prone to give in to what I would call a counterfeit affection. It's something you think is going to work for you, but you find out later it was a lie. It didn't follow through on all the promises you thought it was making you. And it's really hard to make up for that lost ground. So yeah, I think it's a big problem. Counterfeit affections and using controlled substances to try to augment your skills is a bad idea.
So I think it's really interesting. I think there's a perception, Peter, that you're crashing today, that smart people and wealthy people aren't susceptible to addictions and the problems of addiction. And that's just not true, right?
I would say they probably have more ego and pride. And if anybody would say, well, I don't have a problem in that area. So it's where the IQ could work against them.
Right.
And where the competition, look, like all these Ivy League schools where many of these people went to school, they were already like the chosen kids in their county or their state or whatever. And now they get into this bigger pond where there's a lot of other people that are just as smart and they're not used to that. So whatever I can do, to augment that, to amplify that, so I look better, right? It's just so shallow. But look, that's the reality of our existence. I have one client that said, I love my boat until I went out on the bay and a bigger boat came by, and then I hated my boat.
Wow.
So you never win that game.
So, I mean, this should affect all of us too. I mean, these high, powerful people that are in Wall Street and even in our government and around that are dealing with addictions and the issues that were bothering us, a lot of them are handling our money, or our pension funds or things in our organization. So to get healing and to get health, mental and emotional and spiritual health into the people that are managing the money and the finances of our country and in the world is something we should all be concerned about. So I think any effort we can make. So Sean, on the other end of the spectrum, you're not on Wall Street. Your business is a moving business out in Wisconsin, but is it any different with workplace and the addiction problems that you see at your level with your employees?
Well, I got a question for Peter first. Is what position did you play in football? That's huge. I mean, I'm the Packer fan. We got to know that. What did you have going on?
Ray Nitschke, middle linebacker.
Oh, nice. So you lay the smack down.
Mm-hmm.
When Pete, I know I was fortunate enough to be able to go to Hazelden, and when I got plugged in, when I first got sober, it didn't give me what I needed. I eventually went to Cane to Believe Retreat to get the final cherry on top of it. But when I was there was all these people that were like high level people. There was an anchor man from a news channel, local news channel. And then I hear you talking about these Wall Street people, and they hit this bottom, but like they made a lot of money. Like they had a family, they had a house. And I always kind of was jealous in the beginning, like, well, because I was rock bottom. I had nothing. I was homeless. I didn't even have a car or a job. And I'm like, why couldn't my addiction have brought me to that place? You know what I mean? Instead of where I was.
Right.
But, at the end of the day, just like you're saying, it don't matter if I'm at rock bottom with nothing or rock bottom with everything. Rock bottom is still rock bottom. It's still, you still hate yourself. You still want to commit suicide and all that good crazy stuff.
In some ways, it could be worse because you were expected to win the game. So, you checked all the boxes that everybody wants, and you still didn't win, and you're at rock bottom. So, there's just all kinds of self-loathing that, that people find themselves in when they don't meet up to the other people's expectations. So, yeah, I agree. It's bad either way. Rock bottom is rock bottom, and you got to hate it enough to say I'm willing to do whatever it takes to stop. I can't do it on my own. I need help.
Yeah. And you said, you thought you could win the game. And, that's just like me last week at Buffalo Wild Wings on the Blazing Challenge. I thought I could do it and I couldn't. I paid the price. So
many burps later.
Yeah. Still today, I'm not on my game. So what was the question, Tom? I'll answer it now. I'll stop being goofy.
Yeah. How do you see the problem in your industry with as far as addiction when people that work for you or what as opposed to where from the Wall Street point of view?
I'm dealing with a lot of entry level employees. You know, you don't sit at the table with your parents when you're younger and say, when I'm older, I want to be a mover. You know, there's no shame in it. There's a lot of careers like that you end up finding out you really enjoy and can make good money at and pursue, but it's not like the dream job. So you get a lot of people who are either young and trying to get a leg up in life or have been kind of beat up by life. And a lot of those people do have drug problems. And the sad thing is for what I see is you see a guy come, he starts to do really well. He starts to look a lot better. He starts to really excel at his job, and he's finding purpose in his job. And in the end, the purpose isn't enough to keep them sober, and they disappear. And then they come back, a year later, and they do it all over again. And literally there's a cyclical pattern. It's like this, even though it's been 20, 30, 40 people that I've watched this cycle happen with, it's the same person every time it happens. So that's what I noticed for addiction. And
do you find that they might get an injury, like hurt their back and get some meds, and then that can open the door too? I mean, I see that a lot here with construction workers. And, it started out as a way to have to keep working. So I had to deaden the pain in order to just do the job. And then they end up getting addicted, and alcohol, opiates, whatever the thing is, so they can sleep at night. It's just another one of those traps.
It's a trap. So when we talk about this, there's some statistics. 75% of everybody with a substance use disorder, which would be alcohol or drugs or whatever, is active in our workforce today. So this is our discussion. Sean is saying they're coming to work for him. They're coming to work for Peter. They're coming to work on Wall Street as active. They're not, that stigma that everybody is, a homeless person that's an addict is absolutely untrue.
Right.
They're amongst us, and it costs us in emotional and in human terms. It's hard to even put a price on it, but we can put a financial price on it. It's like $81 billion a year in the US, just addiction in the workplace, lost in productivity and absenteeism. Another 7 billion pounds in the UK. My UK friends, if I don't say pounds, I get in trouble on our text. And we do have a couple of great questions coming in. So as soon as we get through this, I have some good question for you, Peter, coming up. So that statistic, let me give you this, put it in perspective. In 2019, of the 150,000 substance use disorder deaths, 102,000 of them were employed. So they were working when they died. And I know I didn't lose my job right till the end. Peter didn't lose his job right at the end, I don't think.
No.
And Sean did towards the end, but then came right back into the workforce. You weren't out of the workforce very long.
Right? Well, no, and listen, I'm an addict. I need money for drugs. So to lose the money is a stupid thing to do. You know what I mean?
Mm-hmm. And today, we know with COVID-19, substance use disorder has gone up. 13%, 18% increase in opioid. And I think those are conservative numbers. And I think what we're going to see is a big wave. Peter and I were talking about this a little bit before we went on, that as we start to open up again and people come out of kind of hiding in their homes, there's going to be a real outpouring of need to battle addictions that have been able to kind of gurgle underneath while everybody's at home.
If you look at the sales of alcohol during COVID, it spiked tremendously. Yeah. And that was how people were coping with being alone. And I have a cousin through marriage, a relative through marriage, who's a police officer in a large urban area in New Jersey that's known for drug use. And he arrests many people driving through with nice cars that present well, that are professional, educated people, that not who you would think, and including heroin. People think if it's a heroin addict that they're strung out somewhere. No, they're still able to function, as hard as it is to believe. And so, look, it's an equal opportunity destroyer, I like to say.
So I have a question. All right, I'm going to start with this one. So, Peter, this comes from one of our audience members who says that she was a successful businesswoman in London and nearly died. Her alcoholism was fueled by trying to compete in the 90s man's world, the
Mhm.
90s man's world. And she heard you mention about successful women in alcoholism and addiction.
Yes.
So can you expand a little bit on that, on your experience with women and the issues?
Yeah, I'm old enough that, when I graduated high school, it was still a man's world in the finance area, at least. So, I watched the whole evolution of women being accepted into the marketplace, and if the pressure's strong on a typical man, under the normal scenario that I saw growing up, and my parents were, my mother stayed home and raised the kids, and my father worked and was the provider, and they were able to do that. They didn't live above their means, but we had a good life. But then all of a sudden, there was a lot more people entering the workforce and people coming in from overseas in the 80s and 90s, especially. And the pressures you could argue are even harder on a woman who's trying to also have a family at home and a professional career and trying to keep up with people that don't have that second obligation about raising the family at home. So, I mean, you hate to speak in general terms, but in general, women tend to be very good relationally, and men tend to be a little bit more the engineering idea. Let's get the work done, and women are very good at the social skills and communicating with each other, and those skills are very valuable in the workforce, right? So they're also good at multitasking. Men are typically unitaskers, right? I don't want to get in trouble for sounding like I'm making just blanket generalizations, but they're all positive things. These are all good things. Except when you're trying to juggle so many things in the air at the same time that something has to give. And often it's your social life, where, the real authentic relationships that you have friends that will tell you, hey, I'm a little concerned about you. You're working too much. You're losing the balance in your life. And now it's just looking up to that next person in the firm and saying, well, I could do that. And then I'll be able to make this much money. And then we'll be able to do all these great things as a family. Except that treadmill just keeps getting turned up faster and faster. And before you know it, you have to use something to keep you going. Just can't keep up.
So do you think when our viewer is expressing that she felt like she really had to try to keep up with the men, did you feel like that's an absolute reality?
Absolute reality. And worked with super successful, talented women, and don't think there's really any difference gender-wise when it comes to competence. A woman can do just as good a job as a man in a white-collar field. Like maybe
better sometimes.
Yeah, not on an oil rig in North Dakota probably wouldn't be the best place to compare. But in a white-collar business, absolutely. That's what I said, the people skills. Now that the computers are doing so much more of the grunt work, it's the people skills that really matter. And look, again, there can be stellar people in either gender, but women do great in law firms, Wall Street, very successful. CEOs of big corporations. One of my clients spent many years as CEO. Actually, I went to high school with her. Super successful and not an addict, to my knowledge, unless she's hiding it well. So it's not a given that they'll become addicts, but they are there.
Right. And it's just been unfortunate and just the way it has been historically that it's been kind of a man's world in that finance world, but it's changing now. The women have moved up. I mean, there's certainly no legal barriers to it, and there shouldn't be any corporate barriers, of course, to women being equal. But I can see where she has a real experience.
Absolutely.
From the 90s that she felt like she had to compete with the men. So I think that women today, as it's getting less and less, still have that extra pressure. And you're right, the whole family thing, that they may have that extra pressure too. And even,
Well, yeah, and then, it's a whole other conversation to say whether that's a good thing or a bad thing. It doesn't matter. It's a thing now, and we have to deal with it. And hopefully, be able to talk to each other about it. If it is starting to overheat in a certain area, nip it in the bud, have an accountability group. And they do that well, I could say, on Wall Street. They allow people to gather around different affinities.
Mm-hmm.
So that part, they are trying to build community.
So we do have a question from one of our UK attendees as well. I'm going to hold off on it for a minute, and that's from Terry W., because I want to get into a little part and then we'll get back to it. We're going to talk about the solution a little bit, because now we've been talking about the problem a lot. so we can start talking about the solution and what it is that got us where we are today, and how do we get this message to those hurting and suffering
Right.
on Wall Street and working for Sean and everywhere in between.
Mhm.
So what do you see, Peter, as some of the barriers? Like an organization like ours, Came to Believe Recovery, right in our name, we say Came to Believe, which could be a turnoff for somebody. But Came to Believe Recovery, we want to bring this message of hope into everywhere,
Right.
not just where we are now. We want to expand and be able to. What would you see as a barrier of us being able to be effective in a Wall Street environment?
Well, the Northeast is known for being a little skeptical. You know, if you go on Times Square where all the tourists go, there's always somebody selling a watch. You know, they open up their jacket pocket and they got all these fake Rolex watches. And so, like out here, at least, people start by thinking you're running some kind of scam. You know, like what's in it for you? They don't really believe that you care about them. They think you want something from them. So the best way, in my opinion, for people to understand about Came to Believe is through relationships that don't have any agenda. That, you know, they don't care how much you know until they know how much you care, kind of thing. So take somebody out to lunch. Don't start by saying, hey, I noticed that you come in on Monday morning and you're hungover. Do you have a drinking problem? Like, probably not the best place to start. How about, hey, I heard you went to Miami and I did too. And why don't we go to lunch? And we probably know a lot of the same people. Or I looked on your LinkedIn profile and I noticed we have a lot of similar friends. Maybe we can grab lunch one day. And then they know, you know, because you do sincerely care about them.
Mm-hmm.
It's just that if you jump right to, I've got your answer, like, what? You don't know me. Like, you don't have my answer. You don't have your own answer if you think that's the way to talk to me. And you know, I'm sorry, but like we've all seen people now, when you walk in a restaurant and there's a family sitting at a table and all five of the heads are down working on their phones in a restaurant. Like they're not even talking to each other. So we're losing that human touch of like, how, I don't even hardly get any phone calls anymore. People text me
Right.
I'm like, just call me.
Right.
We're losing this. And you can't read somebody's feelings in a text, right? I know it started out as just kind of a courtesy, hey, do you have a minute to speak kind of thing, but went way too far. So just the fact that you're saying to them, can we go grab a bite? I'd like to hear more about your story, right? They're not used to that. They're used to the person being a competitor instead of an ally. So that's a great place to start. Just do the normal, like friendly things, and then listen way more than you talk. Right? You got 2 ears and 1 mouth.
Do you think those are the same, a barrier? Do you think that's the same approach that for people for you, Sean?
Well, I like to consider myself, and don't jump on me before let me finish my whole train of thought, because right off the bat, I can already tell Tom's going to pounce on me. But I like to consider myself like glitter, because glitter is the herpes of crafts. Like, it never goes away. Like, once you break out the glitter, it's if you have kids, we were just talking about grandkids before the show. If you have kids, you know that glitter, when it enters your house, it's everywhere. And I like to think like every interaction we have with someone is to just let a little bit of what you have stick to them. And you do that in a way of just being authentic and real, transparent, and reaching out and loving, like Pete's talking about with taking people out to eat. But you get so far down in your addiction that you start to think that the way you think is normal, you know, like I had this thing of like, I'm just going to eat a cheeseburger a day. You know, that's just what I'm going to do, because then I'm not an addict if I'm at least eating. And then you start to think like that's normal, but it's completely not normal, you know, and that's the same way it ends up getting sometimes when we accelerate to this higher level. We start to think that the way we think now that we're healed and recovered and on top, we start to think that that's how a lot of people think. And it's really not either. There's a lot of people stuck in the middle of both either rock bottom or where we are today. And to give them a little bit of glitter, when I get a relationship with people, I start to use language like, this is going to stick with you. And one day it's really going to hit. And one day you're going to remember that I said this, and it's going to matter to you. That's one example of how I try to be like glitter. But another one is just to, like, you know, you have no idea how much it means to someone to go up to an employee or a coworker and say, you know, I really believe in you, man. I've been watching you. and you know, you might be like, how do you believe in me? But I used to be kind of where you were, or I used to, you know, I've been seeing some similar patterns in some other people I follow, and I believe in you, man. You're gonna do great. You're gonna do really good, and I'm glad I'm on your team, or I'm glad you're here. You know, those little things start to stick, and then they pay attention to you, and eventually, you know, my favorite thing is when people say, "What is it about you, man? You're just not like other people. Why are you happy all the time? Like, is this fake? Are you wearing a mask?" And then you get to say like, well, let's go out to lunch and we can talk about it. You know what I mean? And that's the best way to get your foot in the door, because if you don't want it, they're not, it doesn't matter. You could be the best salesman in the world. You're not going to convince them to go after it. So
Yeah, it feels very transactional sometimes, like somebody has an agenda, and, you know, like, you want them to feel celebrated by you, not tolerated while you're getting out your sales pitch to them. It's like, no, you have to first believe in yourself. And when you're using, you don't have a good opinion. So they're like, oh, baby, I don't want to go out to lunch with you because I can't hide it anymore. Like, you're going to learn about the real me. But when you're not judging them and lecturing them, it's like, I want to learn about the real you. It's okay. What do you think? Nobody's perfect. You got stuff. That's what relationships are meant to be, so that we can help each other. And yeah, once that happens, it's much easier for them to listen to you with respect, because you built a relationship.
Okay. We have just a comment that building relationship builds that bridge to breakthrough. It's what we've been talking about, the breakthrough so it is Came to Believe Recovery's mission today and always now to try to get into this Wall Street era. As much as we want to get into the people that are working for Sean, we want to be able to get our message out. We want to be able to tell people that there's a solution. We want to be able to break the stigma. We want to let them know that you can be successful and be sober and be clean. And not only that, you can be more successful and happy, joyous, and free. You can be, I don't want to say in pride, or a healthy level of pride, and you can be upstanding and a successful and prosperous citizen, and be completely sober and be completely accepted in the business world. But getting there and breaking that stigma, I think we're gonna have a little bit of an uphill battle. I don't know, Peter, because I know that there's a stigma probably with a lot of money and the Wall Street, that if you can't hang with the partiers, like you were saying, or you can't hang with the lunch crew drinking, that you've somehow failed. Do you see that as a big barrier for us? Or do you think
No, I really don't. It might have been 30, 40 years ago. You know, people would give you a look if you said you didn't drink, and they don't anymore. And, you know, there's some people that have, if they're in a certain sales role, they get a budget that they have to spend every month. They have to take clients out, and the bosses want the receipts to show that you did it. But you don't have to be partying while you're there. But if you're not realizing you have a problem, it could be leading to the problem, because you're in that all the time. And like Sean said, you don't even think about the fact that this isn't normal for most people to be out in bars and clubs all the time. So yeah, I think the appetite for people today, especially after COVID and all this lockdown, we are not built for isolation. So as people start to re-enter, they're open to go out to a meal or breakfast or coffee or whatever you do, and just talk about life. And you don't have to scratch very hard, you know, to find out there's hurt underneath the surface if they trust you, and they should trust you, because you don't have any other agenda. You're really trying to help them get something that you got basically for free. Like, wouldn't you say it's basically for free? You didn't go away for 3 months and get locked in a room somewhere. You just heard good news and decided to believe it, and it worked. And you're like, oh my God, I saved so much money. I'm not buying rounds in the bar anymore. I got all this, it's having babies in my wallet. Like, where'd all this money come from? Oh, that's right, I'm sober.
It's actually more appealing when, especially when I would meet someone who was like really good at a craft, and you'd be like, well, let's go and have a drink, or let's go do this, and they'd be like, no, that affects my craft. I'm all about, and I think in Wall Street, money talks, you know. So like, if you're really, really good at your job and your performance is brought down because of drinking, it's going to be really impressive to say, like, nah, I don't touch that, because I'm actually better at what I do when I'm not on it. You know what I mean? That seems to be kind of a sexier thing nowadays.
Well, it's a great point. And they normally would say, I'm just a social drinker. I don't have a problem with this. But the credibility factor is based on you being successful. So if you're saying that you found something that you think could help them, and you're in a position in the org chart, that you're a vice president, they're a junior vice president, that's really credible. So the more seasoned people that can reach down to the younger people and mentor them, and it's legit, right? I mean, somebody been on Wall Street 30 years can teach the younger person a lot of good lessons, including why addictions are a counterfeit affection, but they can also give them good career advice. And I don't know, you guys may not know what big corporate America is like today, but there are so many policies that you have to follow and things you can and cannot say. And you can make a very innocent comment and be fired for it. And I don't know how that is going to end up, but right now it's very difficult.
So if you're watching today and any of this has sparked something in you, if you're at work, if you're somebody that's on Wall Street watching this today, or you get this Facebook feed, if you have a family member who's on Wall Street, if you have a family member who's in Wisconsin, if you have a family member who's in Texas or the UK or anywhere in the world, and you're watching this and you're saying, geez, you guys seem to have gotten this thing all together. What did you guys do? Come to one of our retreats, reach out to cametobelieverecovery.org. Reach out to us, register for the retreat, and come through the steps and the answer. There is a spiritual solution, guys. It is underlined by Christian principles. We're going to give you some really practical tools, and we're going to introduce you to a God that's powerful, that can actually deliver on promises and hand you a life like you've never known before. We're not talking about a church that we need you to go to or join. We don't have that as our agenda whatsoever. It's not a matter of that. It's a matter of getting you into a relationship with a power that can actually pull this addiction out of you and have the obsession removed. We don't suffer with that today. Peter doesn't, Sean doesn't, and I don't suffer with temptation at that level of where we're going to go and we feel like we could even relapse. As long as we're following our 10, 11, and 12, and we're keeping spiritually fit like our program says, and like life says, we're good to go. So if any of this has touched you at all, please, we really, 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 really just implore you to reach out to us, because we have an answer and you can get it today. Peter, I have a question for you. And this has like a logistical question for us as a business, kind of, as we're trying to reach into more places to get our offering out to people that are addicted and hurting. How do you see us being able to get our message to like senior managers in organizations so that it could be offered to employees, at least as an option of something they could do? How do you see us being able to do that?
Well, I think I mentioned the affinity group idea earlier, right? So in New York, at least, once they opened the door to one affinity group, it was basically had to be open to everybody in order for them to be consistent with their message. So there could be a faith-based recovery group potentially inside an organization. And often we find out that many of the top leaders in the firm will come and speak there, which is a tacit endorsement that they're a believer themselves, right? That they came to believe, even though it's not hindering their career at the moment, they can relate to those people. So we had that happen. I'm not mentioning any company names right now, but that exact thing did happen. And some of the senior people came down once they knew that the door was open for them to be able to speak into this affinity group without that tagging them as somebody who, was not in the right group or whatever you say. Like if you're going to open the door to one, you open the door to all, and that's happening in corporate America. And you can't persecute faith-based decisions if you're allowing other people to make other types of decisions. And that's a nice, easy way to say it. It came to believe, faith-based. It's a good word. This is a faith-based recovery group.
Right. It's based in a faith and a power that can restore us to sanity. It's what our program says. And we've all been restored to sanity. So that's good news, Peter, that we, and I don't know that it was always that way, that years back, a group like ours could have our message be accepted at all at a senior manager at a level in any corporate America. And I think it's changing today where there's an option. And, you know, money talks, like Sean said. And when we start talking about how much they're spending on rehabs and insurance costs and all, and we say, you know, a weekend retreat could solve people's problems at a fraction of the cost, and they're back in your workforce on Monday after the weekend, changed and recovered, and they never think that can happen until they see it. And we see it every time.
Right, which is really something you should talk about, because I think many people that have gone to the non-faith-based versions of the 12-step feel like it's something I have to do for the rest of my life. You know, every night for the rest of my life, I'm going to be in one of these meetings. And I don't mean to criticize that if it's working for people, but they don't even know there's another option.
You're so right. You know, why do we go to meetings, Sean?
To spread the message of Alcoholics Anonymous to the still suffering addict.
It's just that simple. We're in meetings now to do our 12-step when we go. I don't go to a meeting because I need it to stay sober myself, even though helping others ensures our sobriety, ensures our freedom. It continues the promises coming through in our lives.
Well, something you said before was really key. You don't obsess about it anymore. And when you're in an obsession, it's hard to imagine that you could ever live without it. So, you know, like the desire to want to do it diminishes. And it's hard to believe that that could be the case when you know, like I remember in high school, sticking my finger in an ashtray, hoping there'd be a roach of a joint, you know, and I could find 3 or 4 of them and try to make one more. Like that is just embarrassingly bad behavior, you know, like really, you've fallen to this level that I mean, we could all say worse things we did, but like you're not in control. Like you can be, you really can. You don't have to be obsessed like that, but you've been obsessed so long, you don't even realize there's another reality out there.
And guys, it doesn't matter where you are in your addiction and what place you are in your life. I came in at 42 years old and ended up going back to college and getting a master's degree and doing things like learning how to play guitar, that you can see behind me, and other things that I've done in my life. And Peter's done some things in his point in his life, and Sean has done things in his life that we've gotten back. It's never too late. If you think you can't get your life back or there's no life for you, it's a lie. Come, hear the message, start your life. You were put on this earth to do something, and if you don't do it, no one else will. Everyone is valuable. Everyone is worth it. Everyone is here for a purpose. Don't think that you're not valuable. It's not true. Everybody here has something that they can contribute, and we need it. The world needs you, and we need you healthy and free. And you'll have a wonderful fellowship. Believe me, you're not going to be lonely. You're going to turn over one set of friends that were really hurting you to a group of people that just love on you all the time and are looking out only for your best interests. So don't think you're going to be away. Be lonely, which is what I thought. I'm just reading some things. All right, let's do our giveaway before we run out of time. We're starting to run out of time. We have so many questions today, Peter. We might have to have you come back on. If you're going to come back on for you, because I got questions. We're not going to get to them all. We'll try to get to them. I might forward them to you, Peter, and we can do them in writing to these people.
Sure.
But there's some questions we're probably not going to get to. But let's give away the End Addiction shirt today. So Sarah's going to grab a random audience member, and we'll send you that End Addiction shirt today. Let's see if we can take one more question. This is from one of our viewers asks, how do we encourage, I can answer this a little, and Sean, maybe this is a good one for you too. How do we encourage people who do not have any belief in anything? We meet that a lot. How do we encourage someone without a belief in anything when they hear this message? They're on this right now saying, they hear Peter say faith-based, they hear me talk about Christian principles underneath, and they have this idea they have to believe a certain way. How would you answer that?
Encouragement for me truly is a lifestyle. There's this book I read called The Culture of Empowerment. It's by Steve Backlund. I'll say it again, The Culture of Empowerment. And really, it's one of the best gifts you can give back to society and to community, to your communities, because people don't usually get encouragement. It's not a normal thing, but but it's free for us to give. And that's just where I start. It's just to make it a lifestyle for myself to build up the people around me, because it's just such a simple little gift. And they may not see it. You may be the only person in their day or week or month that said anything that could lift them up. And it doesn't have to be huge. It doesn't have to be revelatory. It just has to be something simple, like, hey, you're doing a great job, and I really like being around you, and I look forward to our relationship getting better, or anything. That's just where you start. You can't start at the big stuff. Like if I just walked up to someone and was like, I can really tell you're going to have a deep relationship with God because you're amazing, that one's just going to go over their head. But if I'm like, you know what? I see a little bit of me and you, and I really like that. You're going to do great, man. You're going to do some big things, or anything like that, just anything to get under them, push that negativity off to the side and say something positive, because it may be the only positive thing they hear all day.
Right from the beginning. And that's a person with no faith at all could start believing then.
Yeah, I completely agree. I was thinking about, I know Steve Backlund too. I endorse his work, great stuff. So I can remember being at one of the bigger firms, and when people make a lot of money that are on Wall Street, they can get like a coating of arrogance, and they don't even realize it, but it's rewarded. So they'll be leaving the office at 7:00 at night, and there'll be the crew that comes in to clean the office. And often in our area, that's a Hispanic crew, and they're maybe older women that pushing the stuff around and cleaning. These guys would often just walk right past them and forget that that's a human being with a name, and it's somebody's mother or daughter or whatever. And you just find things that happen spontaneously just by you walking out what you believe. They'll come alongside you and say, oh, I didn't even think of that, right? So one year we raised money from the people on the floor and put it in an envelope, just like $10, $20 cash for Christmas. And we asked the lady who was the head of the crew to come in to the office. And she was nervous. So we're talking to her and we say, hey, we just want you to know that we took up a collection for you guys for Christmas for your team. And we wanted you to have a Merry Christmas. And we handed her this cash, probably a couple $100. She burst out crying, because she thought she was in trouble. She thought she was being pulled into the office because she did something wrong. Never expected somebody to be generous and kind, and always kind of didn't like the fact that she wasn't even being treated like a human being often. But the wealthier, people that are too busy to notice, they weren't even treating her. And I remember the effect that had on the other person that was with me. So they might not believe in faith, let's say organized religion, but everybody believes something when they get up in the morning. It might not be an organized plan like that, but we all act like we believe. We live our lives in a way that we believe. So that's all. Like when you do it out in the workforce, it becomes tangible. A lot of other examples I could give, but I realize we're probably getting short on time.
We're getting short on time, but that is great. Just simple kindness, I think. And my friend Dale Barker in Florida always says, let it look good on you. And if you let it look good on you, and we're a program of attraction, even though Clarence said it's a program of what does he say? Not attraction, of promotion. We do have to get out there and tell people about it so that they know that there is a solution. Mike Gregory won the shirt. Mike, you won the End Addiction shirt. So send your size and your address to Sarah and she'll send it to you. Well, this has been a great discussion today. I mean, again, we got 5 minutes. We could keep going on. I know we could talk about this for the next hour and a half.
Well, there was something, if you have a minute, I'll
Sure.
the brief version. So another one of those stories that you watch, and there's a lot of layers to it. So there's a coach at a faith-based high school in Texas, football coach, and every year they play the team that's at the local state penitentiary for youth. So the youth prison. And inside the prison, one of the rewards for the guys is they can play on the football team as long as they behave. And they all want to do that, right? So they want to just get out and go play a game under the lights, even though they don't have a lot of people on the team. So the coach of the high school sends out an email to the parents that said, would you be willing this year for half of you to go to the other side and cheer for the kids from the prison? and half stay here. And they'd never had this happen. So the kids come running out of the locker room, and there's all these people in the stands cheering for them. And they're looking into the camera when they're being interviewed, like, we didn't know what the heck. We thought they all made a mistake and went on the wrong side, but they were really cheering for these kids. And it's hard to watch it without a tear coming to your eye. Like, that's all they needed was, like you were saying, so just a little bit of encouragement from somebody, because those parents really wanted that team to win. It wasn't like, you know, they were really cheering for these kids. They didn't win, but it didn't matter. They were interviewing the kids that were in the prison, and he said, man, never had anybody cheer for me before.
Wow.
Didn't know what that was like. I know. I'll send it to you. It's a YouTube video. It really is. But again, it's like, you don't have to say a word. You just let somebody experience it, and it's like, oh, wow, that's a different way to live. I never would have thought of that.
Wow. That is a powerful story. We're getting a lot of questions about the program for all sorts of addictions and for anybody. So I want to make a comment on that Came to Believe Recovery, the 12 steps were always meant to be a solution for any kind of brokenness that you have in your life. It wasn't meant just for addiction. And while some of us have the allergy, we call it, or the genetic disposition for a substance that we get addicted to, there's a powerlessness that anyone can have over whatever behavior it is that has them in brokenness. And that powerlessness has the same solution that we have when we have the allergy or the genetic substance addiction. So you don't have to have the substance addiction to suffer from the same thinking that leads to a bad behavior that has the same solution in our steps, the same solution, the same power that we have that pulled us out of our substance addiction can pull you out of any other type of bad behavior, any other addiction. So absolutely. The 12 steps, as it was meant back in the 30s, was to provide relief from brokenness, from anything that has you in bondage. The power that we take on in step 3, the living God, comes into our hearts and gives us that power to be broken free of whatever it is that has you in bondage. So absolutely, it's for all. Again, if you're interested, we have a virtual retreat coming up next weekend, and then one a month after that. We'd love to have the opportunity to share the message of recovery with anyone who needs it. Please spread the word to anyone that you know. Get in contact with us, and we can help get that message to you. So I want to thank Peter for being with us this Friday afternoon. He's a busy man. He took time out to come. Thanks.
Even with no intro music, you know.
Yeah. Next time.
I'm sorry, Peter. I really am sorry about that.
Straighten them out.
Yeah.
I'm trying. I really am trying.
He always has to straighten me out. He's got me wearing glasses like his. This is all the Sean Higgins influence.
There you go.
The hair is nice.
In the hair, you know, he's got me hip.
There really is a question that I think needs to be answered that we didn't get to, and that's like, what color glitter are you, Tom?
Mm-hmm.
Color glitter am I?
Mm-hmm.
I'm probably shiny bright blue. Why?
I don't know. I just feel like that the world needed to know. I was going to say gold because you're like first place in my book.
Or platinum. You know, that's supposed to be even better.
Well, not plat. I wouldn't go that far, but gold was good.
Anyway,
We'll let that to your head.
Yeah. All right, guys. So, Sean, why don't you take us out as we're reaching the top of the hour, and everybody. Again, thanks for joining us, and we'll see you next week, next Friday. Go ahead, Sean.
Okay, here we go. You out there right now listening to us who are just sitting there and you're like, man, I really, you know who I'm talking about. Right now when I point at you, you know I'm talking to you. Don't live another day in the spot that you're in the misery that you're in. Let that all get behind you. You know, you can be one of those broken people that becomes healed, and then a healed person that becomes powerful. So we just want to say today, for the rest of you out there, thanks for viewing, thanks for tuning in, and we wanted to watch you jump from the level you're at to the next level. So don't Don't live another day in that garbage, even if it's just in the middle, in the mundane. Go check out CaneToBelieveRecovery.org. Get involved. Get this stuff behind you. Get some resources. But hit that like button. Hit that share button. Drop your name in the comments. Give us a smiley face if you liked us. Give us a don't do anything if you didn't like us. Just go on to the next page. Forget about us. But we love you all. Have a wonderful day. Goodbye.
Have a great weekend, everybody.
Take care.